Good morning and welcome to another Maine SBDC webinar. My name is Kelsey Reardon and I am with the state team hosted by the University of Southern Maine right in Portland. And today we have another Maine SBDC at USM business advisor, Chris Cole, with us. And we're going to be preparing for the market season coming up. So we've got farmers market and art markets and fairs and all that. And so we want to make sure that you have the best booth possible for all of these different types of events. And we are very excited to have you all here. There's a pretty good turnout today, so thank you and welcome. If you're not familiar with the Maine SBDC, we are the Small Business Development Centers, and we are a national program that is federally and state and economically development funded so that we provide no cost confidential business advising to all of the small businesses of Maine. Each state has their own program and each state has centers throughout and then business advisors in each center. So when you request advising with us, you'll get connected with likely the closest advisor to you geographically. However, we are still navigating much of this world virtually. So lots of our advisors have very specific industry experience, and we can definitely connect you with someone who is in your industry or has experience with some of the challenges you're facing. Chris Cole owned a couple businesses. She's a fantastic baker and cook, and so we go to her with food businesses often. She's set up at many markets and fairs, and she's a long family line of trade shows, so she is the booth expertise that we go to throughout the network, so we're excited for that. If you're not already set up with an advisor, there's a big orange button on our website that says request advising, and that is the fastest way to get into our system. That form takes about 5 minutes to fill out, and we will reach out directly. I will also send out a follow-up email today that will include the slides and a link to the recording of today's presentation, as well as all of our contact information. So if you can just click that request advising button in the email and get you all set up in the system as well. If you have any questions today, we're going to use the chat feature. If we don't answer your question along the way, there'll definitely be time at the end, but we would love for you all to introduce yourselves in the chat. Maybe let us know what area of the state you're in, and like what kind of booth do you have. We were reminiscing about last year's session on this topic and how great it was, all the connections that were made in the chat towards the end and all the lessons that we taught each other. So we're pretty excited to do this again. And it's that season, we're getting ready to go outside. So now is the time to be proactive for your business. So go ahead and introduce yourself in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to pass it over to Chris to get started.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thank you, Kelsey. So I'll be unfortunately clearing my throat. It's a spring cold. It's that time of year as well. So we'll get started right on this. Fairs, festivals, and farmers markets. These are really probably my favorite venues. As Kelsey said, I've owned some different businesses. I owned a restaurant as well as other things. And I think meeting customers at events like this are just so uplifting and engaging. It's a great time to, really get to know your customers. So you just want to be prepared for that. And that's what we're going to delve into today. And I know Kelsey kind of went over these things. So I will just say that, there's a whole host of services that we provide to our clients, and whatever phase of the business you're in, it is complimentary and confidential. But we always like to let people know that, I can't do your taxes for you. I'm not a CPA. I'm not going to give you legal advice. But, we'll be happy to get you as far as we possibly can with these things, which really saves people time and money. And just sometimes it's just getting an answer on, like, how do I set up an LLC if that's what I want to do? So we do all of that, and there's no question too small or no problem too big. And if there is, I'll find somebody to help me with it. And these are just a map of our locations throughout the state. And again, we do co-advise as well. So I tend to be the go-to person if somebody's going to open a bed and breakfast or a restaurant or food business. So sometimes another advisor that might be like my co-advisor up in Caribou might reach out to me and say, hey, I have this client that wants to open a restaurant, and his expertise is actually in the legal department and mine is in restaurants. So, we help each other out that way. All right, so what we're going to discuss today is, is the venue right for you? Some legal requirements. Marketing is really important. Is this event going to give you some money or at least a return on your investment, whether it's just gaining new clients? The best way to set up your booth, being on time, and preparation for wholesale, and then of course capturing the customers after the sale, continuing those relationships. And excuse me. So I love these images. This is the Ossipee Valley Fair Music Festival. That looks awesome, spectacular, a ton of people. And then on the other side, we have the Balloon Festival, the Auburn Balloon Festival. Both of those are great events. They attract a lot of people, but those may not necessarily be your customers. So when you're planning for events, we want to make sure that you put yourself in the right venue. All right, so I'll get to a list of how many there are in the state because I was amazed. But if you're looking at a new event, then you need to really get some information from the producer about how much money they're going to be spending on the marketing, where they're doing their advertising, who they think their audience is going to be. If it's an existing event, you can get historical numbers like past attendance, also the list of exhibitors and vendors. And typically people in the state of Maine are pretty friendly with each other. I said this in my last webinar, I'll say it again. If you find a vendor that's selling similar products, not a direct competitor, that's been in one of these shows, reach out to them and ask them if they wouldn't mind sharing their experience. That's always helpful to know, why do they keep coming back if it's really good? You want to make sure that when you're preparing for the event, that you're going to be able to restock your products easily. How far is it to your location? Can you fill up a van or something and keep it on site? And then when it comes to the show producer or the craft show or the festival, what services will they provide for you? Electricity, tables and chairs. Sometimes they have a concierge service, which is booth coverage, so that if you need to be away from your booth, and these are the larger shows that could provide something like that. But these are all things that you want to look into. And certainly if you need electricity, you need to make sure that they have that available for you. Excuse me. So Maine has like every festival going, which I love. You can go to a festival every single weekend and probably multiple ones. So these are just, a bunch of, pretty popular ones that have been happening, for quite some time. And, when we talk about alignment, like the Wilton Blueberry Festival, that was something, it's a small festival, but I always did well there because my very first business, I made sauces and condiments, and I had a wild blueberry dressing, and I also had a Maine blueberry dressing and a wild strawberry dressing. And we would bring it to that and do extremely well, right? But if I was to bring pumpkin whoopie pies to that one, I don't think I would do very well. But if I want to bring pumpkin whoopie pies somewhere, I might go to the Pumpkin Fest in Damariscotta or the Maine Whoopie Pie Festival, right? And now we have a cheese festival in Carnival, Maine. That's one of the newest events, new old, I guess. There used to be one, and now they've revised it. And excuse me, it's, that's a wintertime event. So these are just a handful of the things that you can go to. So what are the requirements before you ever get to a show? Lots of times when you look at the application for these shows, one of the things will be a certificate of insurance, and that every, whether it's a craft show or a festival, and sometimes the farmers markets now are requiring them, just making sure that you have liability insurance coverage, and they'll tell you to what amount, and you can get that right from your business insurance company. Do you have your, resale certificate? Your Maine sales tax ID? If you are collecting sales tax, you need to make sure that you have registered for that. If you are a food producer with a home kitchen license, make sure you have your mobile vendor's license so that you can sell your sauces or baked goods outside of your kitchen. And then if you're one of these people with a food truck, make sure you have your food licenses with you as well. So these are a couple links that I put in here for you. And you can click right on them. The Maine business license, it answers questions about what businesses need license, how to go about getting them. And then the Maine sales and use tax, you can go there and register online to set up your tax ID and be able to take Maine sales tax. So before we get to a show, we want to make sure that our audience, our regular customers, already know about us. And advertising, free, it's for me. Okay, so your website, you've already paid for your website, post it on your website. Make sure that you have clear dates and hours of the event. You also want to link to the event so that if they see it on your website, they can click that link to, like, the Damascotta Oyster Festival or the Yarmouth Clam Festival, or excuse me, the Skowhegan Country Fair, whatever you're doing. And then if you know the location that you're going to be at during the event, if there's a map with numbers on it, that's always great. You can post that as well. And make sure you hype it up on your social media before the event. So the best customer to have is the one that you already do have. They're easier to sell to. They already know your product. They already like you. And typically they'll bring family and friends, especially if they're going to go to a venue to see you, because then it becomes an event for the family or the group of friends. For paid advertising, there's a show guide, and they have different levels of advertising. You can go from a mention in a show guide, and usually they'll list vendors without any having to pay for that, because they want people to know who's coming, but can start with a business card size ad all the way up to a half or a full page ad in some of these guides. And the Yarmouth Clam Festival used to align with the shopping notes when the shopping notes existed. Unfortunately, it folded during COVID. And for years, when I had my restaurant in North Yarmouth, I would do a half page ad in that. Even though we weren't in the Clam Festival, it helped me because my restaurant was right down the road from the Clam Festival. But people keep that guide for at least the week of the show and beyond, because if they say, oh, I really like this or that, they can look it back up in the guide. And then the event website, they usually will offer advertising. Lots of times they'll offer it free to link back to your website. If they're using a local paper like the Portland Press Herald or the Lewiston Sun Journal that's associated with the show, they will do a spread. Well, they'll do a feature, a spotlight, they call it, on the show. And if you can get into that, it's usually a reduced price. And then if it's a larger event, they have a media sponsor, radio advertising, sometimes television stations will offer it. Usually radio, it goes to these festivals, and their ads are relatively inexpensive. And if you can get some airtime with the local DJ, that's even better, because people really remember those personal interactions more than they remember an ad. So it is like, you got to look at it like, what is the cost going to be for this show? How much have I spent on my booth build out? And usually a booth build out is going to be something that you'll look over time. It will be spread out, so you can't put it all into one show for the cost of that. But the show spaces can be very expensive. I was speaking to somebody who's going to be in the Freiburg Fair, and they're looking at upwards of $10,000. So that it can be that expensive to as little as, you know, $10 or $50 a day. Depends on what you're doing. But if you're going to a big event and you have to stay somewhere, you have to figure out how much that's going to cost you as well. And then your projections. This is where you got to sit down and do a little bit of homework. How much product do you need to bring to you? How much do you think you're going to sell? If you're going to a festival, and let's say that you go to the Potato Blossom Festival, that's in the top of the state, and you live in southern Maine, and you haven't brought enough and you run out like on the first day, then that's not worth it, right? So making sure that you do a little bit of homework, and that's where getting the attendance numbers come in to play, and then doing some estimation on that. And then, you know, the other thing is there is value about getting your products in front of the consumer. So maybe you might not make a lot of sales at a show, but you may make a lot of connections. And that's where having your marketing materials ready to go is so, so important. Then lastly, you have to consider the opportunity cost. So many people are small business owners. You might even be working another job, and this is your small business as well, and you're trying to grow it. So what could you be doing instead of this show if it doesn't feel like this show is going to be aligned with your company values or your product's going to fit in? One year I did a show that I totally regret it. We brought a bunch of product. It was very dusty, and it was not at all. I hadn't really done my homework. I just kind of went on what other people said. Oh, this is a great show. You really need to be there, etc. In the evening, the show went all day long until late at night, kind of like some of the fairs do. And people were drinking, and our sauces look very much like wine. So I could remember people, like one man in particular, picking up my bottle of sauce and being like, oh, what kind of wine is this? And he was pretty tipsy. And I'm like, that's not wine. I don't even think we sold $5 worth of product, and we certainly didn't get any new clients from that show. So there was a big opportunity cost in that as well. So you just kind of have to figure those things out ahead of time. Booth design, this is really important, and we do a whole webinar. There's a couple on our YouTube channel. One I've done, one that was done by the New England Made Show, but really some good ideas about how to set up your booth so that you attract customers. When you see the pictures, or you've been to any of these shows and the crowds of people, you know, you only have 3 to 5 seconds to get somebody's attention for them to come and want to be interested in what you're selling. So I very much like this display. They've utilized the inside and outside of the Easy Up that they have here. It's inviting. You can walk right into it. And it's done tastefully. And certainly if you need lighting, if the show goes into the evening, you want to make sure that you have lighting. You want to make sure your products are protected. So these have become extremely popular in the last 30 years to have an Easy Up. They're portable, and if you can accessorize your booth, it looks like here they've used the lattice work walls that they just can tack right onto that and then hang their artwork. That's great. That's probably very lightweight and easy to move. I like to do flooring. So we used to have a indoor-outdoor carpet. That was before the nice rugs that they have now, the kind of plasticky outdoor rugs that you can put in that are much prettier. And then director's chairs are really important, or something high stools. So if your booth is such that you're sitting behind or standing behind a counter, you want to make sure that you're visible to the people walking by, so they don't think your booth's unattended. And certainly you want to be engaging. Having a table or a clipboard to write your orders on is really important. You know, and if you're into wholesale, that's even more important to have those things. And signage. I like this booth as well because their sign is really prominent on the outside. And we're just going to look at a few more here. The one that says Luna on it, which is in your top, I always get this reversed, but I think it's your top right side of your screen. That I really like that one, and it's well lit. So this picture is actually taken in the evening. It's a great setup. You can walk right into it. Then the one in the center, I like that one because they have the carpet, which is wonderful. It keeps the dust down too, and muddy feet coming into your booth because, you know, sometimes it rains in Maine. And then the last one, I really love it, but I don't, because I'm thinking this must be set up somewhere they don't have any bad weather. It's got to be perfect, no wind or anything. To me, even though it's really neat looking, I think if there's any wind or rain, somebody's going to have to run fast to get the pottery off the shelves there. All right, packing list. And this I make so that you can print it out if you want to. And these are just things, and you can add to it. I categorize it. So we have our marketing and office supplies in one side. Again, make sure that you have your business cards, your, you know, brochures. If a price list for retail, but also if you plan on doing wholesale, be prepared for that. Payment processing. If you use Square, and Kelsey and I talked about this last year, like she has a Square reader that you just put on your phone and you can slide the credit card, whatever you use for that. If you need an iPad or a laptop, make sure that you have that with you and that it's plugged in and it's charged before you get there. People will surprise you and they want to make right off the minute you open. You're going to have a sale, and then you just don't want to be scrambling looking for stuff. If you need lights, make sure you pack those as well. You can never have enough pens, pencils, or Sharpies, I say. And then I always would bring extra stuff to make signs if I had to, like cardstock. So pack those extra things, okay? And then if you're a food vendor, make sure that you have your sample cups, your utensils, napkins, and then also it's really a good thing to have hand sanitizer out on your counter for people to use. Sometimes if your sample is such, like if you're doing crackers or something, even though you have the little tongs, might be good for people to be able to sanitize their hands afterwards. And have a little trash can on top so they have somewhere to put it. And then extension cords, I had a tote just full of extension cords of all sizes and power strips. Now, certainly at some shows, they'll say you only are allowed one cord, one power strip, whatever it is. So you don't want to overload the system, but you do want to make sure that you have what you need. And first aid kit's always good. Little tools come in handy. We used to have an easy up, and it's, you know, we'd set it up and think, oh, it's a great day. It'd start to get windy. And then we would need to be able to put the tent stakes in. And I needed that hammer to do that. Or sometimes you have to fix things you never even thought about. Zip ties come in really handy. And then the basics, just paper towels and wet wipes. You know, the trash receptacle, I always kept a trash can behind my booth as well, just so that we could keep our stuff picked up. And logo clothes. What I mean with that is if you have like printed t-shirts or aprons or hats with your company brand on it, make sure everybody's on brand that's working your booth as well. And even if you don't, you know, if you haven't gotten to that place yet, try to get t-shirts or, you know, shorts of some kind that match the colors of your logo, so you look like you belong to the booth. And then the what in case incidentals, having an extra change of clothes. Jacket is good. I have been to a show in June. Well, I take this back. Cumberland Fair many years ago, and the weather changed from being about 60 degrees in the afternoon to that evening, we were down to like 40 and windy, and it started to snow. So we know how Maine can be. Make sure you have your jackets with you and rain gear. Comfortable shoes, even though heels are really nice. Those are great for the high-end trade shows inside somewhere. But when we're talking about a festival, you want to make sure you're going to be on your feet all day. And I always bring an extra pair, and then sunscreen, tissues, breath mints. You know, we know there's really, really good food at the festivals. So that hummus wrap, even though you enjoy it, people don't really want to smell the garlic. And then lots of water. This is definitely a must, because it can get really hot and irritating at a show, and some snacks in case you can't get away, so that you keep your blood sugar where it should be. Fans, I used to bring fans to my shows, excuse me, just for my own comfort. So we had the electricity, and I'm like, we might as well have a fan just to keep us cool. And also it helped with our product being food. We didn't want it to get too hot. All right, so where to set up? Location is key if you can do a little strategy here. Corners are preferred because people get to see you on both sides of, you know, you're going to get two sides of view from your customers, but you can't always get that. You want to make sure that you have a distance from your direct competitor. So if you're selling soap, you don't want to be right across from somebody else selling soap or right next to them, because you're going to be competing for those clients. If you're selling food items, you want to try and avoid being near like perfumey scents. And you know, if you're selling some nice clothing, you want to try and stay away from the fried food area, because we know those odors just kind of sit on everything. Make sure that you're well lit, and especially inside, lighting is really important. Excuse me, when you're outside, you want to try and avoid being in the blistering sun, and that again is where the easy ups with a canopy top comes in handy. Arrive early. I'm an early riser. I used to own a bakery, so I still get up early. And it shows. I would get there as soon as they would allow exhibitors on the floor or, you know, out onto the grounds. Like the Clam Festival was great because I could stay right there. They used to have camping in the back of NYA. And then we'd be up super early just to get everything ready to go and make sure our area looked clean and organized. And on the day that you're setting up, it's 99% of the time, the show opens on setup day within a couple hours. So this is where you really need to have yourself organized, because once the event opens, there isn't time to catch up. There isn't time to get things where you want them. And you don't want to lose those sales, but it's very, you know, it's hard to catch back up if you didn't have yourself organized in the first place, as people are trying to buy your product and you're trying to make your display pretty. All right, so showtime. You've done your pre-marketing, you have a nice booth display, you've got yourself organized for the day, you have those totes with everything that you need. So now it's really time to engage your audience. Be friendly and knowledgeable. You know your product better than anybody else. And if you know, educate your customers, that will help to draw them in. So my first business being gluten-free, which was many years ago, I really had to educate my customers on what gluten was and why they didn't need it and why my food still tastes great, even though it was gluten-free. And then, you know, provide your recipes if you have, you know, like dips or rubs or things like that, so people can make other items out of your product. And then story cards, brochures are important. Another thing is, if you are already in some, you know, stores and giftware places, you want to make sure that you have those listed. QR codes are very popular and easy for people to use because they can just scan it with their smartphones. And I believe they're not terribly expensive. There are different places to find them. So you can get a QR code and people can scan it, goes right to your website, and then it can give a really full list of all your products and pricing and everything else. I would always, when people would come by and they saw our products, we had a very nice gift baskets that looked like, excuse me, like the clam rakes. It was a really popular look at the time, and we could fit 4 of our sauces in there. And people would say, oh, I really want this. And we hand painted on those containers. So I would say to them, well, if you really want it, I will, sell it to you now and I'll hold it for you so that when you can come back later, you don't have to carry these 4 glass bottles around. And it was a good way to make sales, because if people are really interested and then they're like, oh, I just don't feel like carrying it around, I'll come back. They don't usually come back. So you want to make sure that you give them every opportunity to make that sale, or give yourself every opportunity to make that sale, as I should say. And don't leave your booth unattended if you can help it. If you have people that are knowledgeable about your product that can help you out. It was interesting this past Sunday, a Maine Maple Sunday. I had a good friend who's got a maple place, and her whole family and extended family were there to help her out. And she had them knowing about her products and how it's, how it's made. And so it was great, because as people would ask about, how do you make these whoopie pies or whatever, the people helping her knew. So it's really important to have, if somebody's going to help you, have them be knowledgeable about your product and enthusiastic about it too. And if you don't have somebody who can do that, I don't say put somebody in there as a filler, as a placeholder that's not knowledgeable or not engaging. Just put up a sign that says, I'll be back in 20 minutes. So I skipped over the part about the giveaway items, but in general, I would spend more money on nicer labels or brochures, anything to do with your product directly, than I would on pens, magnets, keychains, things like that. Those things, the rate of return on those, we don't even have a speculation. People just tend to throw them in a bag somewhere and they forget about them. But if you have a really interesting story or nice packaging, people are attracted to that. So if you're going to spend some money, spend it on that and not the giveaway items. And here we go. This is the Freiburg Fair, probably one of the most attended agricultural fairs in the state. And that's the crowd you want to see. Those are the people you want to get. And if you're going to do wholesaling, so this is another key item, wholesale, make sure that you have your price list with you. Also know your capacity. Sometimes people will come up to you and they might have a gift store down in Cape Cod and they love your product, and they want 1,000 of something. Well, you might not be able to deliver that 1,000 of something. So really know that ahead of time before you start making wholesale offers, because there are people that come to these shows from all over New England, and even down as far as Florida. And some of them they're buyers as well as just being regular consumers. Be selective about who you're going to write wholesale orders with. And then again, be prepared. So that's a whole other little box of, supplies that you need to have ready to go, your wholesale, be ready to write those orders, and make sure that you get a deposit on them when you do write them. And when you're at a show, get to know your other vendors. Vendors tend to help each other out, and they'll say, why, like the next show that's really good, why don't you try this show? Excuse me. And then you can, you build relationships. And the other thing about that too is that, as you build those relationships and start to see each other at other shows, they can also help maybe cover your booth and you can cover theirs, while they're gone. And lastly, my mom's adage, if you got a competitor in the show and you may not see eye to eye, you may not think their products are that high quality, don't talk somebody else down. If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all. We avoid getting in the mud. And this is just another list of, I love the Common Ground Fair. It's great. It's hard to get into. It's a juried show. You really have to pass a lot of tests to get there. But these are just a handful of farmers markets and country fairs that happen in this state. So follow up. This is the last thing you want to do with your customers, or probably the first thing as they come up to the booth is collect their email addresses, if they're willing to give it to you. And that way you can continue your relationship with them. And I say make notes of clients of interest. And you know what I mean by that is, especially if you do go down the avenue of wholesale, or if you just talk to somebody who maybe they have a summer house on the coast and they really like your blankets, and they're thinking, you know, I've got some, you know, family down in South Carolina and they might be interested in these too, right? So just if you can make a note about somebody, and then when you send an email to them later, you really can personalize that in email, you know, if that's possible. And then the thing that you want to do with that is just make sure that you inform them of the next events that you're going to be at as well. In your emails, you know, list new products or specials that are coming out. Excuse me. And then, as I said, you know, the easiest customer to sell to is the one that you already have. So keep those relationships relevant, and you'll continue to have customers. And I just wanted to say about this picture here, Pickles and Potions, they were at the New England Made Show, which is a wholesale trade show. And this gentleman here is a little Irish guy. He just went perfect with this booth. So I loved his setup, and I loved it. It was just very relevant, and really he was a very engaging salesperson as well. So excuse me, Maine, right? 24 agricultural fairs, 70 festivals, 115 summer markets, plus we also have the winter and fall markets, thousands of craft shows, and then there's like a dozen art walks, I should say, you know, plus all these other things, Windjammer Days, things like that. So there has to be an event every weekend all year long at this point that happens in the state of Maine. And sometimes there's multiple events. So, you know, it's you can really pick and choose and find a place where you fit. People are very much into shopping directly, shopping locally. Lots of times at these festivals, if you are somebody that makes like gift products, people are shopping for Christmas already. I know I used to do that when I was no longer selling my own products. Even when I was selling my products at the Yarmouth Clam Festival, I would go to the craft section every year, and that's what my family got for Christmas, was locally made. Here are some clickable links, how to find events near you. So, excuse me. And you want to really look at like what the cost of the events are and what the requirements are when you look at these. But there's some really good lists there. And then how you contact us. This is our website here, and our 1-800 number. And that's it. I'm going to stop screen share and open it up. And if anybody has any questions or comments, I'd love to hear them. I know last time, there I am. I know last time we had a lot of people, you know, come with some really good ideas and experiences. So please feel free to share. We've got 20 minutes. So Kelsey, were there any questions in the chat or?
No questions yet, but if anybody's got them, go ahead and stick them in there. Thank you, Chris. I always love listening to you talk about like the little details that people don't think about. So that was a very extensive list, and I thought it was great. So go ahead and stick any questions you have in the chat. Just a reminder that we did record the session, and I'll be sending out the recording and the slides. So all of those links that she mentioned will be clickable in those slides that you'll get this afternoon. Chris, if everyone did one thing when they left this session, what should it be? One thing to prepare for markets.
Oh, one thing to prepare for markets. I would say the biggest thing is to really know your own capacity of, you know, in preparation for your for the show. So it's interesting. I was talking to somebody who does these wonderful crochet products. And I was saying, well, how many can you make in a day? And he's like 3. And I was like, okay, so, how long is this going to take you to get ready? And he really had to think about it. So, just, make sure that you have enough product when you go with you. That's one thing. I'm going to give you 2 things. The other thing is really make sure that you're on brand. You got your labels and those materials ready for follow-up.
Both excellent advice. I was thinking, so I'm a fiber artist, and I used to set up at First Fridays, and I would bring a stool because I don't like standing. And I was only out there for like 4 hours. I definitely wouldn't make it through a full day or like a weekend long event. But I would make my husband pull up with a stool, and I would go grab it out of the backseat of the car and stick it on the sidewalk. And then I honored my capacity the day of as well. So we're getting thank yous. I got a couple private thank yous. Very informative today. So we're glad. We hope that you all found this very helpful. Chris is I find that Chris does a very good job of explaining, what's the word? The value proposition. Is that right? I'm learning vocab words too.
There you go. Yeah.
What makes your product more valuable? So if there are a whole bunch of soap makers or a whole bunch of sauce makers, what makes yours stick out? And so Chris mentioned her sauces were gluten-free a while ago because she is a good sister and she wanted to make sure that her sister could use the products. But that helped who knows how many people stay healthy, but also help their sisters or whoever it was in their life. And so make sure that you are advertising what makes you stand apart in that 3 seconds that Chris mentioned that it takes to catch someone's attention.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Kelsey. Absolutely. You want to really emphasize the positives about what you do and why you do it. I had a good backstory as well of why I did it, because my sister has celiac. She got it when she was pregnant with her 2nd child. And nobody really knew at that point. People didn't know what celiac was. The prevalence isn't like it is now. That's why I had to do a lot of education. But also wanted to invite anybody here. If you just have one question or whatever, please go right ahead. My email address is in the presentation, and you can email me directly. If you just have a question or something or a concern that you didn't want to share with everybody else, I'd be happy to take anybody's questions after as well.
I have a question.
Sure.
Do you most of the people here, because I'm not in Maine, I'm in Florida, but do most of the people have a brick and mortar store, or are they just mainly doing farmers markets or festivals? Or so, you know what I mean? Are you branding just through shows, or are you also doing it through a store?
Sure.
Let us know in the chat, everyone. Do you have a brick and mortar shop, or do you just set up booths? And then Chris, you can answer in the meantime.
Yeah, I was going to say that we've found that a lot of people will start out in fairs and festivals, especially people that are making their products at home. And then they have online stores as well. So they might not have a brick and mortar presence at all. And then doing the festivals, fairs, and farmers markets really allows them to actually meet their customers and get the feedback that you don't really get. I mean, sometimes people are pretty bold online, they'll tell you, but it's nice to have the interaction with people, and establish those relationships. So
yeah. And that's everyone who's answered.
Yeah.
Everyone says they do shows, markets, and they have an online store. So no one has said they have a brick and mortar so far. It's also a good test. Like, do you think that a store would work? Go to a fair. If you sell out every single weekend, there might be a market for you to go ahead and invest in renting or buying a storefront.
And that's when you want a business advisor, because we're going to do the costing, right? Yes. Because sometimes those rents are much higher, and sometimes It's really interesting. I worked with a woman who used to do Fish Teas by Maria, and in the Yarmouth Clam Festival, she did that show every year. She had a really unique product. She actually caught fish off the coast of Maine, painted them, and imprinted on these T-shirts, right? She worked her way through college and graduate school on the money she made. And she just continued to do it because she loved it, but she was also making money, and never opened a store. So sometimes that just works out better for people, right?
That's interesting. On that note, someone who mentioned they just do markets and online said they have found that a lot of their local customers like to stop by their workshop and they're fascinated by how things work. So like, I would want to see a fish print made. I would go, like if I was always buying fish prints at the farmer's market and I knew she was going to do a workshop, I would go to that for the weekend. That might just be me.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, we only see you as an iPhone, but what is your name? You're in Florida, you said?
Yeah, Juliet.
So are you coming Maine for the summer? Do you come here in the summer? Do you have a house up here or something?
No, but I have friends that are up there. So I'm just getting familiar with the area. So,
well, but we welcome you to join us at any point, but also I love when people call in from different areas. We are a national program, so the Florida SBDCs are pretty fantastic. We've met some of them at our conferences, so definitely.
So do you have the website for the Florida one, or is it easy to get? Or
I'm sure that it's easy to get, but I can find it also.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
What kind of products do you sell?
Hair care.
Okay. And is this something that you're making yourself? You're making these products?
Well, part of it is, and part of it is just wholesaling through other vendors that become, it's a little kind of a side thing that I've just started to get involved in. So I'm not because I do have a brick and mortar store too. So
oh, sure. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, this is, sometimes it's a great way to reach out and market to, other people being that way. I always said I would have done the Clam Festival again just with my granola when I had my restaurant. But I was so busy, we could never get anybody to work the booth because we were always busy on that weekend because, people would come to my restaurant and eat during the Clam Festival too. So, but I think it's a great way to capture more of an audience as well.
Well, I find that I love what I do, but sometimes just having a different venue I'm getting to the age where I don't want to do the same thing I've been doing. So I'm trying different things. So, I appreciate all the information though.
Great.
Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, excellent. Well, thank you everyone for taking the time to be here today. And I
have one more question. Sorry to interrupt. I don't want to miss Zoe's question. If there are many sections within the event where you can have your stall, how do you decide which areas would be best for sales or most relevant? Also, have you had success in shows if you don't have capacity yet for wholesale accounts? Yeah. Shows and wholesale are two very different things. So we have a bunch of really great wholesale webinars that we did last month in partnership with the New England Made show. And I highly recommend those. If you're looking into wholesale, jump into those. Because it really digs in a lot deeper to all of that. And you do not need to have wholesale capacity to do a farmer's market or a craft fair. That's another level.
Sure. And so the question was, where do you decide?
How do you decide? You said corners are good, but are there other things to take into consideration when choosing a space? I try to choose a place that is not in the direct sun.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, if your product, right? Sometimes it's you don't want
it's me
or yourself in the direct sun. But certainly if you can go to a show before you become a participant, it's better. And it's interesting, even though I don't attend as a participant anymore, whenever I walk and I grew up in the show business, I was my dad started the first consumer trade shows in Maine. And I won't tell you what year it was, because then it will give my age away. But anyways, it was a while ago. So, you know, I still will look around and say, oh, there's a dead spot there. That's not a good, I wouldn't have a booth here, you know? Or it looks like people are just jammed up there. You know, why would I be next to, like the Bloomin' Onion, like when it was hugely popular, nobody wanted to be next to them, not just because of the smell, but just because people would be in front of your booth, right? So, you know, you really want to try to get similar. If you can get in a similar product line, and lots of times shows will set it up that way, where they have the crafters in one section, you know, and then they have like specialty food in another section, you know, so they really try to make it so it's good for you. And the other thing is ask the, you know, producers, hey, look, this is my first year. Where would you recommend, you know, me come in with my skincare products? What, you know, what would be a good space? So I would do that.
It's also probably a good fire to light underneath you to first come, first serve. So you want to get in there early, get those good spots.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought that up, Kelsey. And I did want to say this, that, you know, usually once you have a space, if you renew, you know, the producer or promoter or whatever they want to call themselves will send out their contracts at a certain time, say, if you renew by this date, you get guaranteed your spot. And I know for me, we moved from in the beginning from a not so good spot at the Clam Festival to like a really nice middle spot. And once we got that, we renewed it every year that I had that business. So yeah, that's another thing, is if you really like the show, make sure that you grab your spot again.
That makes a lot of sense. And I was thinking, I think I just saw Common Ground put out their call for crafters. They're like reviewing applications now. So like that fair is in the end of September.
Yeah.
So,
and the Clam Festival is also, I just saw that today on their website, they extended until the 31st of March, which is right coming up. But their application isn't that complex. So if it's something you're interested in doing, go to their website, download it, and fill it out. And, you know, if it's something you really want to do, because I know I tout that one only because I went to it so many years and it's really well attended. But
that makes
so you want to start looking at those dates and when the cutoffs are, if that's something that you're going to do.
Yeah, and then add those dates into your calendar as a reoccurring event so that you're ready for next year as well. All right. Well, I don't see any I don't see any other questions. Got that out eventually. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you, Chris, as well. Through a cold, no less. This is the business advisors so dedicated to you. They'll fight through thick and thin, through mucus and whatnot. So we've got your back one way or the other. We hope that you'll definitely get connected with an advisor if you're not already. Keep an eye out for my follow-up email, and hopefully we'll see you at the next event.
All right. Thank you, everyone.